14 days, not from today, from January 12 to January 26. That is the exact gap between the Commission's own statement and the moment the Mandlanga Commission reopens its public hearings. On screen, show it clearly. January 26, 2026. Hold it. Now do me a favor. Hit like right now, because what you are about to hear is not party gossip. It is the architecture of power in public under oath. And subscribe, because we are not going to stop digging. Here is the part people keep missing. The Commission is not coming back. It is coming back with a structure, and that structure tells you exactly what happens next. Bring the Commission statement on screen, the one dated 12th of January 2026. Zoom in. It says Phase 1 was about establishing whether there was a factual foundation for the allegations that triggered this inquiry. Those allegations were first placed on the table in Durban on 6 July 2025, and then repeated under oath when Mkhwanazi became the first witness on 17 September 2025. Before you think this is just a KwaZulu-Natal story, I need you to look at the mandate, not the headlines. The mandate. Bring up the Government Gazette proclamation that created this commission. Listen slowly. It says this commission exists to investigate criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system arising from the allegations made public on 6th of July 2025.
I think there is a lot of work that is overlapping between the commission and other institutions of the state. But to echo what Paul has just mentioned now, that the Commission of Inquiry is a tool by the executive to deal with a major public issue, to find the facts surrounding a major public issue. And so first of all, we need to scratch out the word judicial Commission of Inquiry. It's not a judicial Commission of Inquiry. It has to do with the executive.
Now look at what the terms of reference actually list. On screen, put the list up, simple, one line at a time. SAPS, including the Political Killings Task Team and Crime Intelligence, Johannesburg Metro Police, Ekurhuleni Metro Police, Tshwane Metro Police, the National Prosecuting Authority, the State Security Agency, the Judiciary, including Courts Administration, Correctional Services. Pause. That list is a warning, because it tells you this was never designed as a single province scandal. It was designed as a system-wide audit of influence. Now zoom in on what the Commission is specifically told to examine. Not opinions, mechanisms, suppression or manipulation of investigations, corruption of law enforcement leadership. And then this line, the one that hits differently after December. Intimidation, victimization, or targeted removal of witnesses, potential witnesses, and officials resisting criminal influence. Listen that again. Targeted removal of witnesses. This is why Phase 2 matters, because the Commission is not just collecting stories, it is testing whether institutions can hold when pressure is applied. And here is the legal part most people skip. The proclamation says the Commissions Act applies. That is the framework for sworn evidence, summonses, and consequences when people lie under oath. Also note this. The President later amended the reporting timeline by proclamation in late November 2025. That is what a live inquiry looks like. It adapts under stress, it extends, and it keeps moving. Now go back to the 12th January statement, because this is the sentence that changes the whole temperature. But it also admits something brutal. The evidence in Phase 1 was not tested by questioning. Pause. Because that line is a warning. Phase 2 is where the room changes. Quick correction, Phase 2 is not starting from zero, it already began before the recess, and January 26th is the moment it resumes with the real responses. According to the Commission, Phase 2 is where people who were implicated get the opportunity to respond to what was said about them and, where applicable, make their own allegations. The Commission also says Phase 2 will cover other issues in the terms of reference that were not addressed in Phase 1. That is not a continuation. That is an escalation. And yes, it is still about oath-level accountability. Public reporting describes Phase 2 as a stage where those implicated respond under oath, with cross-examination and rebuttal now on the table. Now bring up the names, because names are why South Africa watches. News reports that Phase 2 is expected to include testimony from suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya, Head of Organized Crime Richard Shabiri, and KZN Hawks head Lesetja Senyona. Do not treat those as background characters. These are the kinds of witnesses that change the temperature in the room. And the calendar is not vague. The Commission itself says it will resume hearings on 26 January 2026 and that dozens more witnesses are due to appear over the next few months. Independent broadcast reporting also confirms the same return date and notes more witnesses are still expected. Additional public reporting confirmed the same. The commission resumes on Monday, 26th of January. Now here's the value info most scripts skip. If you want to understand how serious this is, you do not start with vibes, you start with numbers.
In accordance to its deadline, in 45 days, the commission has heard 37 witness testimonies into allegations of criminality, political interference, and corruption in the criminal justice system.
37 witnesses, 45 days of hearings, 87 pages of transcripts, 120 document bundles used in hearings. Those are not influencer numbers, those are record numbers. And the commission says it has also received 28 walk-in submissions, and that 45 of 89 hotline submissions were within its terms of reference. In other words, this is not just what was said on the stand, it is also what people are quietly feeding into the machine behind the scenes. This is the part where you need to understand the machine, not the headlines. Because a commission like this is not a talk show, it is a legal engine. Bring up the names running it. This commission is chaired by retired Constitutional Court Justice Mbuyiseli Mandlanga, with co-commissioners Advocate Sesi Baloyi SC and Advocate Sandile Kumalo SC. Pause. That is not random staffing. That is the state putting senior legal weight behind a process that will be challenged from every direction. Now bring up the venue. Look at where this is happening, Brigitte Mabandla Justice College, Pretoria. This is not a hotel conference room. This is a controlled environment built for hearings, security, and record keeping. And here's the detail that tells you this is bigger than a political cycle. The commission says hearings have been held in formats ranging from fully public to partially public, with one hearing fully in camera. Read that again, in camera.
I think we discussed this earlier that commissions have had in the past sensitive information that has had to have been shielded to some extent. However, we haven't seen a complete exclusion of the public. So, for example, in the Zondo Commission, where you had witnesses from crime intelligence to come deal with evidence relating to the slush fund at the time, some of those evidences, or rather the witnesses, were in camera, but you could still hear the oral testimony and the public was still allowed entry into the commission and its hearings. However, in this instance, you're seeing a complete blanket ruling, or rather a rule stating that when it goes in camera, that the media cannot participate at any level in that hearing, meaning that you'll be shut out completely from this portion of the testimony.
That is what happens when the stakes force a choice between transparency and safety. It does not mean the story is fake. It means the environment is hostile enough that some evidence cannot be aired like entertainment. Now, bring up the line most people skip. The commission says its live stream carried proceedings to millions of people, at home and abroad, free of charge and unmediated. That matters, because it means the public is not relying on secondhand summaries. You can watch the contradictions in real time. You can watch who answers. You can watch who dodges. And you can compare Phase 1 statements to Phase 2 replies, line by line. After the killing, national security structures stepped in. Hold that thought, I'm going to show you the statement in a second. And if you want to understand what the president expects from this, bring up the Government Gazette proclamation and the terms of reference. That is where the referral power lives. It makes it clear the commission can refer matters for criminal investigation and prosecution. It says the president expects the commission, as part of its terms of reference, to refer actions thought to be criminal acts for prosecution. Pause again, because that is the bridge between a commission record and a courtroom docket. So when Phase 2 resumes, do not watch it like a drama. Watch it like a stress test. A record is built, a response is demanded, contradictions get exposed, and where the evidence points to criminal conduct, the expectation is that it does not end with a headline. It moves forward. Now, pause again, because the commission itself marks a turning point that changes the meaning of everything. On 5th December 2025, a witness, Mr. Marius van der Merwe, was killed outside his home, and the commission calls it an inflection point. The commission says his evidence touched allegations tied to Ekurhuleni and the EMPD. That tells you this is not a single province story. Public reporting covered the killing and the public reaction, describing it as an attack on justice.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, in a statement this morning, has urged law enforcement agencies to undertake a thorough investigation into the murder of witness D and to ensure that the perpetrators face justice. This now follows news that witness D, who has since been identified as Marius van der Merwe, was gunned down in front of his wife and kids.
And right after that, the security posture changes. In a joint statement dated 6 December 2025, Nat Joints and the Commission say they met after the killing and agreed to enhance the Commission's security operational plan. They also urge the public not to speculate while investigations proceed. Do not speculate.
Starting things off now, Nat Joints and Mandlanga Commission, they've, following the meeting yesterday, agreed to enhance the Commission's security operational plan over the next 2 days.
That is what you say when you know the environment is volatile. So when people tell you it's just another inquiry, you need to remember this. This inquiry continued under pressure, with heightened security, because the cost of testimony stopped being theoretical. Now rewind, fast, because Phase 2 only matters if Phase 1 actually uncovered something worth fighting over. One of the most repeated phrases during testimony, as described in public reporting, is the so-called Big Five cartel, described by a witness in the hearings. That is testimony, not a legal finding, but it matters because it shows what kind of claims entered the record under oath. And outside South Africa, the framing gets even colder. An international deep dive analysis about underworld influence and the state points to the Mandlanga Commission as part of a broader story about how criminal networks intersect with institutions. That does not prove allegations, but it explains why global observers are watching. Now connect the structure to the moment. Phase 1 built the base. Evidence was gathered. A record was created. Phase 2 is the response phase, where the people named in that record get their turn, and where the story can split into contradictions. Phase 3, according to the Commission, is where Lieutenant General Mandlanga Mkhwanazi and supporting witnesses are recalled, and their earlier evidence is tested, with the chance to reply to anything raised in Phase 2. So here's the line you end this section on. 14 days, from the moment the Commission told the country, "We are coming back," to the moment the questions begin again. And this time, it is not about listening, it is about testing. Remember, a commission does not convict, it builds a record, tests contradictions, and produces findings and recommendations. The courtroom is where guilt gets proven. And if you have information that falls inside the terms of reference, the Commission says you can do it anonymously and confidentially. There is a hotline and there is an email. After everything you have just seen, this is where the story stops being abstract. Because once a commission maps networks and people start talking about fear and pressure, the next question is simple. What is happening to the people at the center of this web right now? And this is where Cat Matlala re-enters the frame. Not as a rumor, not as a vibe, as a live legal case moving through the system. Bring up the NPA media release on screen. Big font, no edits. Matlala case transferred to the High Court. Listen the date out loud. 12th of November 2025. According to the National Prosecuting Authority, Matlala and his co-accused face 25 charges, and 11 of them are attempted murder linked to 3 separate shooting incidents between August 2022 and January 2024. Pause. Because charges like that do one thing. They force the state to prove it. And the NPA is telling you this is serious enough for the High Court of South Africa, Gauteng Division, Johannesburg. Now zoom in on the next line. The NPA says the case was postponed to 29 January 2026 for the first High Court appearance. Put that date on screen next to the Commission return date. Jan 26, Commission resumes. Jan 29, Matlala first High Court appearance. 3 days apart. That is not coincidence as a feeling. That is the calendar doing its job. And then the NPA adds more. It says the state alleges, among other things, that the accused opened fire on Tebogo Thobajane and other complainants, laundered over R120,000 linked to the alleged plot, and submitted a fraudulent invoice to conceal the origin of funds and mislead the court. Stop there, because this is where power gets tested for real. Not on social media, in the evidence chain, in the docket, in who shows up and who folds, and who suddenly forgets what they saw. Now layer in what an early January report described. According to that report, Matlala was moved inside the prison system under circumstances that raised questions, with sources in the department saying there was intelligence his life was at risk. The report says Matlala feared someone might try to poison his food, and that he was being isolated for safety. On screen, put 2 words up, midnight move, because that phrase matters even when the details are disputed. Transfers like this are not comfort, they are control. They are risk management. They are the system quietly admitting we have a high-risk detainee and the environment is unstable. And here is the point, said carefully. This does not prove guilt. It does not need to. It proves seriousness. High court escalation, a fixed high court date, and reported security-driven movements all point the same way. Matlala is not being treated as an ordinary detainee. He is being managed. Now let me teach you something that people miss because they want spectacle. When people say, nothing ever happens, what they mean is, I did not see a viral arrest on camera, but real system stress shows up differently in court postponements, in high court transfers, in sealed filings, in custody decisions, in quiet moves that leak anyway. So when someone tells you, Kat Matlala is in prison, do not hear stasis, hear containment. When you hear about transfers, do not hear privilege, hear threat assessment. And now, widen the picture, because one case can look like an exception. 2 cases moving in parallel starts to look like a pattern. Katiso Molefe. When big names become docket numbers. This is where Katiso Molefe enters the narrative. Not as a detour, as a bridge. According to broadcast reporting, on 3rd December 2025, Molefe returned to the Alexandra Magistrates Court in a matter where he is accused of masterminding multiple killings, including DJ Somebody. Now, bring up the NPA statement from October on screen. The NPA says Molefe was granted R400,000 bail by the High Court after an earlier bail application was dismissed in the Magistrates Court. And the NPA explains the state's argument in plain terms. It argued he has influence and resources and could evade justice or interfere with witnesses. Listen that again. Influence, resources, witnesses.
Contrary is proven. So usually the state in such instances, they will oppose bail, but for them to oppose bail, they should have reasons to do that. Remember now, the accused, he is only accused of having committed the alleged offense. It has not yet been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So, yeah, so now, if he can prove that it's not a flight risk, the court has to take into account or put in place the restrictions that will ensure that he does not evade trial, which in this case, they have requested a large amount of money from him, which is 400,000.
That is not internet language. That is prosecution language. Now add the second NPA release. On 4th December 2025, the NPA says the Alexandra Magistrates Court postponed the matter to 5th February 2026. That authorization was granted to centralize a docket, and that due to seriousness, the case was transferred to the High Court for its first appearance. And it says Molefe and co-accused face 35 charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and firearm charges, with the state alleging he orchestrated the murder of DJ Somebody. Put these dates on screen side by side. John 26, Commission resumes. John 29, Matlala, first High Court appearance. Feb 5, Molefe back on the calendar, High Court track active. Now tell me that nothing is happening. This is not a commission talking in the abstract. This is the justice system dealing with defendants, charges, and court roles. And this is the educational moment. A commission asks questions. Courts demand answers. Commissions can expose patterns. Courts test whether the state can prove specific acts beyond reasonable doubt. When both move at once, the political temperature rises, not because of speeches, but because accountability begins to stack. So as Phase 2 approaches and big names are expected, understand what that phrase actually means. Some names are already answering to courts. Some are already in high court processes. Some are already being managed as high-risk nodes. That is not closure. That is a system under strain. One process becomes 2, then 3 now, here is where it escalates again. Because the commission is not the only room. According to investigative reporting, Parliament's ad hoc committee identified witnesses for a second phase of oral evidence, including Dumasani Kumalo, Kamotso Falane, Julius Mkwanazi, Robert McBride, Brown Magotsi, and Paul O'Sullivan. Different mandate, different room, same gravity. And even Parliament's own site confirms the committee's hearings and witness planning, including Falane as a scheduled first witness when oral hearings resume. Pause. This is no longer one inquiry chasing testimony. It is multiple arms of the state pulling the same thread. Now move closer to paperwork. Because the most damaging part of this saga is not a press conference. It is files, specifically the 121 dockets tied to the political killings task team.
Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Shadrack Sibiya, insists he didn't interfere with the work of the political killings task team. He claims that the National Commissioner, Fani Masemola, had ordered him to return the 121 dockets to the original station in KwaZulu-Natal. And it was then that the KZN Commissioner, Mandlanga Mkhwanazi, refused to accept the dockets. Sibiya says this happened during the gradual phasing out of the unit.
Public reporting says the commission heard testimony that Shadrack Sibiya had no authority to remove dockets from the KZN political killings task team, and that he instructed 121 dockets be moved, halting investigations. And additional reporting adds a hard, ugly detail about what those dockets represent. It says copies of the 121 dockets were secured for the commission while originals remained with the task team, and it quotes that 107 of the dockets are murder cases, plus other serious offenses. Listen that again, 107 murder cases. That is not politics as entertainment. That is backlog as a weapon. And when dockets move without clear authority, it does more than delay justice. It fractures chain of custody. It blurs command responsibility. It gives everyone room to deny. So now connect the dots. The commission examines alleged collusion and failure. The courts test criminal liability in specific cases. Parliament examines oversight collapse. And the dockets show where the machinery jammed. This is not redundancy. It is triangulation. And this is why the story keeps expanding instead of closing. Because the web is no longer theoretical. It is being tested in 3 places at once: a commission chamber, a high court docket. A prison system operating in defensive mode. That is not closure. That is the middle.